And hello again, and you find me back on my drive cleaning up the engine before it goes back in the frame. Today's a pretty sunny day but quite cold and very windy, so hopefully you can hear me okay. So I'm just getting all the muck off the back of the engine. I've got most of it off now. I'm just using soapy water and pure fairy liquid. This is great stuff actually. Just pour it on and just leave it, rub it on. I've got brushes and old toothbrushes and a brass brush. Just do it over and over again. It eventually gets everything off, and it's really cheap. You don't have to have fairy, you could have some cheap brand instead. And yeah, it works really well. Just takes a lot of time. So I am getting there, as you can see. So at the moment I'm still waiting for a delivery of all the stainless steel fasteners I need for the engine. Right now the cam cover's not yet bolted down, it's just resting there. The cam cover has been vapor blasted, but it's not been fully sort of made to look like brand new, because I didn't want that. Because if it was looking like brand new, it would look like a sore thumb on the rest of the engine. Because obviously the engine is not going to be fully vapor blasted. So I asked him just to do a sort of light blasting, not too much, you know, in terms of making it look absolutely brand new. And that's what he's done. So I'm quite happy with that. So I'm just now going around. I've got a brass bristle brush here. That works really well. I've got a steel one too, but that's a bit too aggressive. That'll scratch the aluminium. You don't want to do that. So I'm just going to get stuck in, getting all the nooks and crannies and get this crap off the engine before it goes back in the frame. Now, the frame is due to be collected tomorrow. I'm due to collect it tomorrow from West Yorkshire, from Bingley, from Triple S. I've had a phone call today to say it's ready, so tomorrow morning I'll be doing a long drive there and back early in the morning. So I want to get this engine as prepped as I can before it goes back in the frame. And now it's a little bit later in the day, and I've just had two parcels turn up. The first one is this one, which I think contains my brand new side panel made from ABS. A place on eBay which makes all kinds of side panels for different motorbikes, and the price actually isn't too bad. It's no more than buying a used one, which often has damage. So this one here, I am told, is made from ABS, the same as the standard part would be, and it's also been made with slightly stronger, or a lot stronger, mounts on the back. So obviously it's a weak point, they'll break just as mine are broken, and this has had that resolved by making the mounts a bit better. Yeah, that's pretty good. They even know the difference between ones that have retest badges and ones which don't. Mine doesn't have the retest badges, so it's a different moulding. So yeah, that's pretty good. So that's fantastic. I'm very pleased with that. Far better than buying a used damaged one anyway. So yeah, pretty happy with that. So that's great. And what's in the second box is a bit bigger down here. This box here. Let's see what's in here. Not really opened it yet, but let's have a look. Yes. What's in here? Get rid of that. Is my new or used tail section. It's actually the correct colour. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to get it resprayed anyway, but this is the original colour of the bike. And hopefully there's no damage to it. Yeah, that's okay. Oh, it's got some sort of badge there, some sort of sticker. Not sure what that's all about. Get that sorted out. A few little marks on it. But yeah, pretty good. No obvious damage. No obvious damage to it. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's even got the original mounts, which I don't need, but never mind. Yeah, it's just got a little weird little hole in it for some reason. Don't know why. Little grommet in it. Let's pull that out of there. Okay, I don't want that. Little hole for some reason, but we can get that filled over, get it painted, and we should be good. And in fact, this is the original bodywork. I think are very similar to the original colours of my bike before it got all rusty and faded. So yeah, that's pretty good. So with those two home now, I can now put together the other side panel and the tank, which I first got stripped down, removed the badges, removed the petcock and the filler cap, and all this lot can go to Mark the painter to be painted. God knows how long that will take, but the sooner we get it over to him, the better, because A, I'm then in his queue, and B, it's not in my way here, it's out of the way, and obviously space is a bit of a problem right now, so the more things I can get out of here, the better. And now it's the last day of the second week of my project build, and as you can see, I've collected the frame from S over in Bingley, West Yorkshire, along with the battery box and so on. And as usual, they've done a fantastic job. And while I was there, the owner said to me, well, next time you come, bring along your camera and the tripod and you can film whatever you like. That's great. But while I was there, I got a little tour and I took some photographs of what they're up to, because they've got some new facilities now. They've got a rail system in the ceiling so they can move parts around a bit easier, and they've got a new, much bigger oven. So yeah, they've got quite a lot of new kit there. So here's some photographs I took this morning. So we'll start off just looking at some parts that are hanging up, having been blasted and powder coated, and they're just now waiting to be finished off and wrapped for the customers. There's also then the blasting area. They've got two blasting areas. They've got a big blasting cabinet, and then they've got an even bigger blasting cabinet, like a room, where they can handle things as big as a car chassis. You've then got something new for them. They've got a sort of new waterfall system, and that's where they powder coat the objects, and the waterfall system behind catches all the powder that doesn't end up on the piece and carries it away safely, rather than leaving it to float around in the air. So yeah, they had quite a lot of kit there, all going on. There's some fantastic pieces, some beautiful Dynamag wheels that have been treated with a beautiful gold finish and so on. So yeah, a very impressive place, and I've been using them now for more than 30 years. Also a fantastic finish from them, never a bad job, so I could heartily recommend S. If I knew anywhere better than that, I'd use them, but I don't, so we go to S. So anyway, now that I've got the frame back home, it'll soon be time to try and put the engine back in the frame. However, before the engine can go back in the frame, we've got to finish making those stainless steel engine bolts. And to do that, I've got to take those bolts and the nuts to Jeff Will's place, where he'll weld on a nut on one end, and then take them back to Jeff's place, where he'll skim those welded nuts on his lathe, make it look good, and then they can be used to mount the engine in the frame. And so join me then next week, and we try and put this frame on my freshly cleaned up engine. And now I'm just back from Jeff de Wells' workshop, where he welded the nuts on these new engine mounts for me while I waited. And while I was there, I took some video just with my camera, so here it is. Another one done. 3 more to go, or 2 more to go, whatever. There we go. And there's something. And as you can see, those nuts get pretty damn hot when they're welded. So now what I've got to do is take these back to the other Jeff's workshop, where we'll put them on the lathe and skim the ends of these nuts to make them look pretty cool, and then these will be ready to be used on the bike. And so next I'm going to do some detail work on the bike. As they say, the devil is in the detail. So here we have 4 stainless steel hex bolts, which are used to hold the engine brackets to the frame, and they all fit just fine. However, this stamping you get on top of the hex, it doesn't look too good, so I'm going to remove it and get the heads polished. And so, since I don't have a lathe here at home, we'll do it the old-fashioned way with a hand file. So I'm just going to file off the proud writing that's stamped in the head of this hex nut. It doesn't take long, about maybe a minute or so. Right, so with that done, the next step is to make it look a lot better. And we do that by popping it into my hand drill, like so, make it tight, and then, like that. And so next we take various grades of wet and dry sandpaper. I'll start off with 240, then go to 400, then 600, and that's enough for me to get the finish I want. Put it down on the hard floor, press down hard, and away we go. Move it around a little bit if you want. You can use it wet or dry, it doesn't really matter when it's quite rough paper. After a while, it starts looking pretty good. As I say, you then move on to 400. like that. I think you can't really tell, but it's looking pretty good at the moment. And I'll finish off with good old 600. I'll use it dry. Like that. If I wanted a better finish, almost like a chrome-like finish, I can keep going and go to 800 and 1000 and so on, and maybe even finish off with auto sole, but for me, this finish is just fine. And so now we have a before bolt and an after bolt. Looks much nicer. Now it is of course much quicker and easier to do this if you've got access to a lathe, but I don't have a lathe here at home, so I do it the old-fashioned way with a file and a hand drill. And to be fair, the results are pretty damn good. Now you can of course buy pre-polished stainless steel fasteners, but they cost a lot more money, so I do it the old-fashioned way. So now I've got to repeat this process over and over again for every stainless bolt I want to fit on the bike. I guess it's just a small point, but it does make the bike look a lot nicer, and to me it's well worth it. And the good news is, if you do this to stainless steel bolts, they stay looking good pretty much forever, unlike chrome or mild steel. They don't rust, they don't degrade, and they stay looking good for a very, very long time. And so tomorrow we're going to try and put the engine back in the frame, or rather we'll put the frame over the engine. And so to that end I've covered the whole frame in this foam tubing, which is normally used to insulate pipe work in houses. Didn't cost much money, I think it's £1 per metre, and I've got 4 metres on here, and hopefully, fingers crossed, this will protect the beautiful powder coating just in case things go awry and we knock the frame on the engine or we drop it or something, so hopefully it's all well protected. So join me then tomorrow when we try and put the engine back in the frame. And now I'm just cleaning up the engine as best I can before it goes back in the frame. And I've hit a problem which happens an awful lot with these kind of old engines, which is that 2 of these fasteners which hold on this cover just will not move. You can tell in the past people had a problem with it because 2 of these are socket heads, but 2 have been remaining as cross heads because I guess they couldn't get them out. So I thought, well, no problem, I've got a secret weapon, which is this, and this is a JTS end screwdriver by Vessel. But it's an impact driver, as you can see here. So you whack it on, put it on there, hit it with a big hammer, and hopefully it should get the screws loose. But in this case it doesn't. These screws are on so tight I just can't get them off. So I'm not sure what to do about that. I could try a lot of heat, let it cool down, heat, let it cool down, and see what happens. Another option is to just grind it off, and then I'll get the cover off and then worry about getting out the stub of the bolt later on. Another option is to cut with your Dremel, just cut a slot across the whole head and then use an ordinary flathead screwdriver to try and get it off. But my God, these are so tight. The way it works, actually, let me just put that down. Put that down over there. So this is, as I say, an impact driver. So you whack it in there, nice and firmly, as much hard as you can, and then hit it hard. As you hit it, it also turns the screwdriver, which should hopefully undo the screw, but in this case, it isn't working. You can hit it as hard as you like, and it's just not having it. Normally this works pretty damn well, but in this case it's not doing. No, there's no way that's going to come off there. Oh no. So I'm not sure what to do about that. I've got that one and one underneath. Now obviously I don't have to take this off just yet. I could leave it for the time being and put the engine back in the frame and worry about this another day, but I would really like to get this off now, to take off this cover so I can give it a good polish and clean. It's got a few scratches on it, so yeah, bit of a pain, but this happens. This is the biggest problem you find when restoring old bikes. The fasteners do not want to come off. They either break off or just be stuck and just not come off at all. So I've used this before, it works really, really well, but in this case it's been defeated by these 2 bloody crosshead bolts. Yeah, so a bit of a problem. Another problem I found is that here towards the back of the engine, here on the inlet side, I was hoping to retain the original inlet rubbers, save some money, but unfortunately one of them had a crack in it, a small crack, so if one's got a crack they're all going to go eventually. So I've taken them off and ordered a new set, so that'll be a slight delay, a few days before they arrive and get them on the engine, and then there'll be time to try and put this engine back in the frame. And now, as you can see, I've got the engine back in the frame. Thankfully Jeff could come over to help me for half an hour, and that made a world of difference. I would hate to think how difficult it would be to get this heavy engine in this heavy frame doing it all on your own, but thankfully I had help, so that made life a lot easier. So now I've stripped off all the protective foam, everything's fine, and I've just fitted the swing arm. That went in okay. I've now got to fit the yokes, but I've got brand new bearings for that, so I'm going to put the races in the freezer for a while, and that'll help it go in the headstock. But right now I'm running out of time, so I think that's it for today. But I am so relieved this engine went in without any problems, because I was worried it would cause us all kinds of difficulties. I didn't film any of that because we were so busy working on the bike and getting the engine in, I didn't have time to worry about the camera and the lights and the sound and so on. So you missed all that, but it's just a reverse of what happened in part 2 when I removed the engine. So yeah, it all went pretty well. There was one problem, which was with one of the new stainless steel engine bolts. We made it a bit too long, so Jeff's taking it away. He's going to shorten it by about 5 or 6 mil, and then it can go back on the bike, and that's all good. So next then, I think I will, as I say, fit the yokes and then start fitting more parts I've got for the bike. I've got a few new parts which have just arrived, but I've still got quite a few parts yet to come, such as all the new fasteners for the engine, the new inlet rubbers. I've got to work out what to do about the rear shocks, and right now the wheels are off at a local tyre place because I asked them to remove the old tyres. When that's done, I'll go and collect them. I'm going to strip those wheels down, cut out the spokes, and make a start on rebuilding those wheels. I've also ordered some parts from a Ducati, would you believe, which hopefully we can make fit on the front end of this bike to improve the brakes, but that will be for a different episode, maybe part 4, something like that. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with progress so far, and yeah, we'll carry on tomorrow if the weather holds well. Today it's been a beautiful day. It's actually quite warm. It's only early February, but you know, it's warm enough to be out in a t-shirt, so that's been a great boon. I would hate to do this in the pouring rain because I've got no space to work in the garage, so we've got to work outside here on my drive. But yeah, so far so good, so we'll carry on tomorrow. And so now, as you can see, I've got the wheels back from the local tyre place, who have removed the tyres for me. That said, these wheels are still quite blooming heavy. In fact, I might weigh them in a minute to see how heavy they really are. So next then, my plan was to cut out the old spokes, polish up the hubs, and rebuild with new spokes. That was the plan. But now I've seen these rims a bit more carefully, a bit more detail. They do look a bit rusty, and they're also very, very heavy. So I am now edging towards investing in, or buying a pair of lightweight aluminium rims for the wheels, and that won't be cheap, so I'll have a think about it before I make a commitment. So that was a plan, but now we're going to do something else. I can still cut out the spokes and polish up the hubs, but obviously I can't yet rebuild the wheels. I also have to wait a little while before I cut up this front wheel here and cut out the spokes, because this wheel has got a bit more work to have on it first, and that's what we're going to talk about next. And that something arrived in a box about an hour ago, and here's the box. And in this box we have two things. We have a brake master cylinder for front brake and a front caliper, a Brembo 4-pot, and both of these are from a Ducati 600 SS from the late 90s. And I've bought these because I'm hopeful we can fit this caliper to the front end of my Kawasaki Z650. Now, I have fitted new better brakes to the F2. In fact, we fitted a pair of 4-pot calipers from an R6 along with the discs to the front end of the F2 here, and that was a lot of work because we had to make spaces, and trying to fit the discs to the wheel was a real nightmare. And you have to make spaces to move the disc out to give you the clearances, because these 4-pot calipers are much fatter on the inside than the old-fashioned standard calipers from 1977. So we've got to do the same thing with this particular front end, but I am hopeful we can fit this caliper to the front end, to the front wheel, by moving out the disc and so on. But I want to retain the speedo drive to the front wheel. That's something we lost when we did the work on the F2. It's one of those things, and because I lost the speedo drive, I couldn't use the original speedo tacho unit, so I fitted a completely electronic new fancy dancy electronic speedo tacho unit to the bike. But for this bike I want to retain the original speedo tacker unit, because I think it's part of the bike's identity, and I like them, and it's very charming. And so I really want to keep that speedo drive to the front wheel. The problem is that you have to make a spacer to go between the disc and the hub, and by moving out the disc, it kind of interferes with the routing of that speedo cable. But I'm hopeful, I've been told online it's possible, so hopefully we don't have to move out the disc so far that it gets in the way of the drive, but we'll see, we'll see. So that should be quite an interesting modification to make. And so with that then, I think this is a good time to end this particular video, part 3. But in part 4, we'll cover the attempted fitment of this caliper to the front wheel of the bike, and we'll cover probably the rebuilding of the wheels, hopefully, possibly with new lightweight aluminium rims, and we'll also cover, no doubt, building up the front end, the yokes, the forks and so on, and the instrumentation and all this kind of stuff. Plus, I've also had a big order from Z Powers arrive today in this box here. There it is. Lots of goodies in there, lots of chrome bits and new parts for the bike, which will fit to the bike in part 4. So I think that's it for the time being. So thanks for watching, and cheers.